Buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
The Michael Dukes Show.
I have 2 guns, one for each of you.
Firearms Friday.
As Thomas Jefferson stated, it is the right and duty of the people to be at all times armed.
Say hello to my little friend.
I say that the Second Amendment is, in order of importance, the First Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all.
The Michael Dukes Show. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Firearms.
From my cold, dead hands.
Friday.
Here's my rifle, this is my gun, this is for fighting, this is for fun.
Firearms Friday.
Firearms Friday. Good morning to you. How you doing? It is the Michael Dukes Show, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or translator, and around the world at MichaelDukesShow.com, where you'll find the audio-only live stream and so much more. Good morning and welcome to the program. It is just another beautiful day here in rainy paradise, and we appreciate you guys coming in and being part of the show today. Firearms Friday is a day that we dedicate to the Second Amendment, to firearms rights, goodness, discussion of laws and guns and history and, well, a little bit of everything that surrounds the concept of the Second Amendment. And that's what we're here to do today. We're going to dive into this and talk about all the different issues that surround it and some of the hot news of the day. I'm excited about what's going to come down today. On the program, we're going to do a couple different things today. First and foremost, we're going to meet up here in a few moments with J.D. Tuccille, who is a contributing editor at Reason magazine. Reason's been doing some really good stuff here over the last month or two on their coverage of the Second Amendment and firearms stuff. It has escalated. They would occasionally in the past do stories related to the Second Amendment, especially if something big was hitting and everything else. But specifically, J.D. Tuccille and Jacob Sullum have been doing just some really, really good work over there at Reason. And if you are a Second Amendment aficionado or member of the gun culture, I would recommend adding Reason to your reading list for that reason alone. And of course, they have lots of other writings from a what I would say a more balanced and libertarian perspective than a lot of the different places out there. You may not agree with everything that they write about or that they report on, but it is really my go-to place for many, many stories of a national nature, I guess I would say. And I know I don't cover a lot of the national stuff here on the program, with the exception of Firearms Friday. I know I don't carry a lot of national stuff, but Reason has a good handle on most of those things. And so, again, my recommended reading site and source for many, many different things out there. So go check them out over at Reason.com. All right. Well, good morning. Several ways to participate on the program today. You can do what you is doing right now, which is listening on the radio. But if for some reason you can't get the radio, maybe you're inside of a building, you're in a different area, whatever, you can always find us. You can always find us on the interwebs at michaeldukeshow.com. That's the audio-only live stream. And, of course, you can find the chat room on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch. Probably the most people in the chat room on Facebook right now is where you can go to find out more about that. But any one of those places, you can go out there and find it. And, of course, the podcasts are available each and every day. Just go to Facebook.com, or go to Castbox or Stitcher or, TuneIn Radio, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. It is a great place to be able to. It's really the only place you can tell me what to do. Dukes on Demand. Dukes on Demand. And you can, that's what we call the podcast, and you can find them there. All right. So, what should we dive into today to get things started? Well, first and foremost, we have a piece of news that is both good and bad. The bad news is that there was another shooting. The good news is that the shooting was stopped almost immediately by an armed citizen. And, of course, I'm talking about the shooting at the Greenwood Park Mall, which happened early this week, where a 22-year-old man drew his firearm and put an end to what would have been an absolutely horrific attack. And it surprisingly didn't seem to get much play in the news media. I know that's shocking to you. You can't believe it that they would actually not report on a good guy with a gun, and that's it. This is shocking. That's where they're at. But here we are. A good guy with a gun, a 22-year-old, stepped up and made things happen. That was in Greenwood Mall in Greenwood, Indiana. Now, the Elisha Dickin is the name of the 22-year-old man who intervened, and he has got he has been lauded by pretty much everyone for what he did. Even, I would point out, the mall owners. Okay, so here was the interesting thing, and I don't know if you caught this on my Facebook page earlier this week, but I posted to my Facebook page it was a copy of a tweet from Sage Dynamics, which is a firearms training outfit, and they basically pointed out that the mall where the shooting took place was a gun-free zone. In fact, Sage Dynamics points out that I'd like to point out that Greenwood Mall is a Simon Property Group mall that with a blanket gun-free zone policy. 2 men broke that policy, one to murder, the other to protect. The gunman is dead because someone ignored that policy. Carry everywhere is what he said. And I've said this for a long time, obviously, that the gun-free zones, and we've had discussions with Dr. John Lott about this and other guests to talk about the statistical probability of a mass shooting happening in an area where guns are strictly prohibited. And this is no different, my friend. This is exactly what happened. But the very interesting part, is that the store and the mall chain, even they had something good to say about the Good Samaritan, Dickin. Dickin legally carried a pistol without a permit under the constitutional carry law that took effect in July the 1st in Indiana. Technically, he violated the mall's no weapons policy, but the owners don't seem bothered. They have a statement on their website saying, in part, "We are grateful for the strong response of the first responders, including the heroic actions of the Good Samaritan who stopped the suspect." Doesn't sound like they're going to be pressing charges against him for carrying a gun in their mall. Doesn't sound, I mean, so again, this is because again, both of them ignored that law, but one was there to protect. It's very interesting. Somebody in the chat room just said NPR did a feature on the mall shooting and they barely mentioned Elisha. Of course they did. Of course, because again, it doesn't fit the narrative. The narrative is guns are bad. If we had no guns, this wouldn't be a problem. That's their answer. If guns are bad, and if there were just no guns in civilian hands, but again, we could see it across the world. That it doesn't matter if you have legal guns in civilian hands. It's the bad guys, the criminals, who will do illegal things who are using the guns anyway. Right? It's like the mall sign. They ignored the mall sign. It's illegal to kill people. It's illegal to shoot. It's illegal to. They did all these things. The shooter did all these things, just like every shooter does. All the way through. But the idea that the only thing that can stop that, because again, police have no duty to protect you. And in fact, we saw in Uvalde that they waited outside for 77 minutes while the gunman went around killing children and, teachers and children for 77 minutes. The only thing that you have the ability to do is to make sure that you can protect yourself and defend yourself. That's the point. That's part of the point of the Second Amendment. And so the idea of a good guy with a gun stopping a bad guy with a gun flies right in the narrative, right in the face of the narrative of the news media. We saw the same thing happen in Sutherland Springs, Texas. You remember that one? Where the guy went into the church and started shooting people up, and a neighbor, one of the townspeople, rolled up on it while it was happening, and he got his AR out, and he shot the suspect, and the suspect fled and then crashed and died a minute or two later from blood loss. You remember that? And of course, very little was talked about. This guy was still loaded for bear. He was still going. He wanted to go find more targets, and he was put down by a citizen with a gun. And in this case, with a scary black rifle. And there was very little. And in fact, I remember that was the actual shooting where Greg Jarrett from Fox News got up and as a talking head and started spouting off just a bunch of idiocy, including how easy it was to turn that AR-15 into a machine gun. I mean, literally, this was his commentary during that time period. And at that point, I was just like, okay, even, so some place as cherished by freedom-loving Americans as Fox News, which I was not as enamored with Fox News as most people seem to be. But even Fox News has got a bunch of talking heads that don't know nothing. They go out there and they spout off on these issues, and they don't bring an educated person on who is an expert in the field or who knows about firearms or anything else. He just gets up there and starts blathering on and on about how this scary black rifle was a machine. They don't want to talk about it. They want to put up people that know nothing about it. And really, that's the reason why Firearms Friday is here. So I guess that was the whole thing. It just that's where we're at with Firearms Friday. And look at that. We're already up against the break. It is the fastest 2 hours in radio, especially on Friday. We especially make that happen. So let's take a break. And when we come back, J.D. Tuccille from Reason Magazine will be our guest. And we're going to talk about Uvalde and the response. The new report is out, by the way, from the Texas Department of Public Safety that chronicles the absolute unmitigated failure of the Uvalde Police Department. And we'll do some comparatives with the Greenwood Mall shooting as well. And Tuccille is going to be with us to talk about this. Again, great stuff. Don't go anywhere. It is The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Well, hi there. How are you guys doing? Welcome to Friday. Yes, I am still at home. I was planning on broadcasting from Homer today, and it didn't happen. Did not happen. So a little bit of a snafu, and ended up that, well, I'm staying home this weekend. Oh, staying home, missing my adopted hometown, but that's just how it is. Sometimes you gotta deal with what life throws at you, right? Sometimes that's how you have to make the deal. All right, let me go back here and see what you guys are saying. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Looks like California stepped on its pee-pee. SCOTUS is about to release the Kraken, says Jeannie. I've been following this. This is on their gun law. California and New York especially, and it looks like now that there's some lawsuits going on in Delaware to try and force their hand on their stuff as well. So it's going to be an interesting few months when it comes down to that. An interesting few months for sure. Let's see. Let me get Mr. Tuccille on the program and see if we can get things squared away for this morning, shall we? We'll get that. We'll get that going on right now because we can. That's how it works. Okay.
JD Tuccille.
Good morning, Mr. Tuccille, sir. How are you this morning?
Doing well, and you?
You know, it's a little rainy, which is actually pretty good because we get 3 million acres on fire up here, and so a little rain doesn't hurt us. And it's not snowing, so I guess that's the positive, right? I mean, anytime it's not snowing here in Alaska, we feel pretty good about it.
Not snowing and not on fire. You're doing okay.
I know, really. It's like, I mean, it just seems like that's, we were talking about that the other day. Summer in Alaska consists of construction delays and forest fires, and that's pretty much, and salmon season. That's pretty much the three things that we get around here. How are things in your world?
We're doing all right. We got that whole forest fire thing down ourselves, and we're in the midst of monsoon and got some rain, so the fires are starting to go out. Smoke's rising in the sky.
Yep.
We're enjoying our summer.
Hopefully it's cooling you off a little bit so all the air conditioners are not sucking the entire energy output of the planet, I guess. That's your big problem down there in Texas, right?
Yeah, it's only about 104 today, so locally that's not that bad.
Oh, wow. Well, that's the cool time of the year. Yeah, it's amazing.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're in the break right now, just you and me and 30 or 40 of our closest friends on the internet here. We're about a minute and a half away from rejoining the radio, and we'll get things kicked off. I did want to applaud you and laud your prowess as a writer. You and you and Jacob Sullum and everybody at Reason, you guys have really stepped up your 2A game the last few months. I've noticed that there's been a lot more writing specifically about the Second Amendment, and I want to tell you that I really appreciate that. You're my daily read anyway, but it's nice to see a lot more stories about gun rights and things. It seems like you guys have been really digging into that category here recently.
Well, thanks. We appreciate that. And with the Bruin decision, it would have been an oversight if we hadn't treated that. Obviously, it's a very important issue.
No, absolutely, absolutely. But your deep dive into the gun making world with your son and everything else—that's a lot of good stuff. So I know that Bruin is important, but you guys have been kind of on the tip of the spear on this for a reason, and I appreciate all you're doing over there. So,
well, thank you.
Hold the line here for just a second, JD, and we'll be back to you here in just a moment. We've got the latest article from JD up right now. I'm posting it in the chat room, and this again talks about Uvalde and the new Uvalde report and some of the similarities and differences between that and what happened at the Greenwood Mall. We're going to continue here in just a second. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like and share the show. Like and follow the show page. Do all the YouTube-y things. Subscribe, ring the bell. Let's get to it. Here we go. All right, continuing on with this segment of Firearms Friday here on the Michael Duke Show. Again, the one day a week that we dedicate to issues revolving around the Second Amendment. And joining me this morning is a writer, contributing editor from Reason magazine, JD Tuccille. He's the former managing editor of Reason, and has worked for a whole slew of magazines and publications. Does some really good work over there at Reason. Calling in from the what he said is a nice, cool day in Texas, only 104 degrees, to share his thoughts with us this morning. His latest article at Reason magazine, revolving around the Second Amendment, is "One Civilian with a Gun at an Indiana Mall Offered Better Protection Than 376 Cops in Uvalde." That's a hell of a comparison. We'll get his take on it right now. JD Tuccille joins us on the program. Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you. Thank you for having me on.
Well, I appreciate that. Now, this has got to be a little bit closer to home for you than many people. You do reside in Texas, and so you've got a little bit of a better, understanding of some of the factors involved in this. But we've heard about this. 77 minutes. According to this new report, which came out exactly the same day that the Greenwood Mall shooting happened. And, of course, this report goes through and just chronicles the absolute abysmal failure of the Uvalde Police Department in responding to this shooting at Uvalde in what has been the scientifically proven method of reducing the amount of carnage that happens in these things. Let's get your take on it. Walk us through here. What's going on?
Oh, absolutely. By the way, I'm in Arizona, but this is the same region of the country. And it's no problem at all. But I mean, this is a big deal. You had an enormous police response at Uvalde. You had one shooter. Probably stopping him from killing anybody would have been impossible. But from the time police were on the scene until the police finally breached and went in, and it was a Vortex team, a Border Patrol team that basically said, we're going to stop waiting for someone to take charge and just go ahead and do it. At least 73 minutes passed, which is unbelievable. And during the course of that 73 minutes, of course, you had 19 children killed. You had 2 teachers killed. You had parents restrained from going in themselves when they saw the police were doing nothing. The police restrained one of their own when he got a message from his wife that she had been shot and was dying in the classroom. So this is just amazing. 376 officers on scene, 1 criminal, and it took them over an hour to do anything to respond. And the Texas report from the legislature was absolutely devastating about the failure to follow their own training, the complete inability for anybody on the scene to take charge, despite the fact that you had, an acting police chief there, and that there's a whole priority, a whole protocol for who is supposed to take charge of the scene and who that might pass to once somebody else arrives.
Right.
There really is no excuse for this whatsoever. It was a complete and total failure.
Right.
Yeah, and unfortunately, and I pointed this out, it's not a one-off. This happened at Columbine. It happened in Florida at the shooting there a few years ago. We see these 45-minute to hour-plus delays as the police kind of did or prioritized their own safety and failure and just totally failed to take responsibility for responding to what's really a horrendous situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Columbine was the case study, right? I mean, the police stood around outside for like 47 minutes or 48 minutes and did nothing. And that is like been the case study ever since for law enforcement on these kind of situations because it allowed the gunmen to run rampant in the school. And they made the decision, okay, we need to go in as quickly as possible, gather some people, even if it's onesies or twosies, they said, against an unknown number. That's our job. That's what we do. And that's what the training, that's what, active shooter training is all about. And in fact, the Uvalde Police Department had just gone through a cycle of training on active shooter training, like almost less than 90 days before this happened. And yet they ignored everything and just stood around outside. And again, like you said, even stopped people who were willing to go in on their own unarmed and collect their children. Even then, I mean, it's just astonishing when you read what actually happened.
Absolutely so. And it's horrifying when you realize that this training they went through was specifically meant to prevent the Columbine delay from happening again, and then the Parkland delay from happening again. So all the training they've received is supposed to say, do not delay, go on in, because we've seen these failures in the past. Don't let that be a future case. And they went and ignored the training. And as the report said, they prioritized their own safety over that of the children who were inside those classrooms. And I don't know how you fix that.
No, I mean, especially since, again, we've gone through evolution after evolution of training, and this has been in place. Columbine was in 1999, and basically within a year or two, they'd kind of come up with these doctrines and everything for just go in and do it, and that's the way they've been training for the last 20 years, and yet we see these failures. Now, it doesn't happen every time, obviously. There are instances of police moving in and doing it quickly and making it happen, right?
Oh, there absolutely are. There are good cops. I mean, the head of the Texas Department of Public Safety is probably the greatest critic of how this went down. He talked about how he's horrified and embarrassed by this, but somebody has to take responsibility at the scene. And the person taking responsibility, if the other police restrain him, obviously isn't going to accomplish anything good either.
Right.
So, so if you have 376 officers who are not only prioritizing their own safety, but won't let anybody else step up and say, you know what, I'll be the one who goes in, you're going to have delay and you're going to have increased loss of life. And the people who are paid and tasked and trained to supposedly take on these dangers end up being an impediment to ending a deadly crime. They actually make sure that it continues and becomes much worse than it needed to be.
It's interesting, and you don't cover this in the story, but I saw it on some secondary reporting on this, that the city of Uvalde spends 40% of their annual budget on their police department. And of course you've seen the memes, the Facebook pictures of the Uvalde SWAT team and all these things. It's like they almost are canonizing the police department, and they're spending a tremendous amount of their money on it. And yet this is such an abject failure. I wonder what the long-term ramifications are. I saw somebody call for the actual department to be disbanded and have something new put in. I don't know what the possibility of that is, but I don't know how you come back from something like this. Such an abject failure.
I think the specific department is going to have a very hard time recovering from this. I don't see how they recover faith. I don't see how the individuals involved recover trust. But I also think there's a larger lesson here when you see this happening again and again. And again, I'll point out there are good cops out there. There are cops who go in there. There are cops who take on the responsibility. But institutionally, it's clear that we can't rely on a trained police force to be the ones to show up who take on a difficult situation and resolve it, because you don't know which cops are going to show up. You don't know how they're going to react when they hit the scene. And that's why this is such a stark contrast to that of Elijah Dickin at the mall, Greenwood Park Mall in Indiana, where you have an untrained citizen. This is a guy who went shooting with his grandfather, was never a police officer, was never in the armed forces. And he ends the situation. I had written within 2 minutes. Since then, we found out it was actually within 15 seconds. He ended the situation. Now, three people lost their lives. but 15 seconds to make sure that nobody else is harmed, I think for an average member of the public, tells us that maybe we're putting our faith in the wrong area.
Right.
That professionalizing our protection, professionalizing our safety may well have been, and I'll say flat out, say it was a mistake. We should be returning that responsibility to individuals for themselves and for their neighbors and for the public at large.
Yeah, and for a variety of reasons. I mean, we've got all these people with training, and as you pointed out, the Uvalde police even stopped one of their own from going, and somebody who obviously was trained and was willing to put his life at risk for his wife, and to go in, and they even restrained him. I found that interesting, yet a young boy with no front sight, gun sight, Thunder Ranch, combat training, no other, just simply went shooting with his grandfather, was able to put 8 hits on target with 10 rounds 15 seconds after the whole thing started. It starts to call into question many of the things that people say about citizens with guns being ineffective. And quite honestly, I think it puts paid to that argument in total.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've seen, and I cited a number of examples in there of people who, over the years, in recent years, have used a gun to defend themselves and to defend others, who have ended mass shooting situations, including another mall shooting in Tulsa. I mean, people who responded because they were on the scene. And even the best police officer isn't on the scene. They got to get there. People who usually instigate a crime do so when there's not a law enforcement officer standing right there. So the people who are in the best position to react are those who would otherwise be victims or who are bystanders to the incident. And there's just no way of changing that dynamic. I mean, we're not going to have an army of police officers stationed every 15 feet. I mean, that's just not a realistic scenario. So, yeah, I mean, we have we have a great many examples of people defending themselves and who made the headlines, so I can find the money to do a news search. We also, I think, a fair number of us know of people who have ended violent attacks by drawing a weapon, did not fire the weapon, and then walked away because you don't want legal hassles after the fact. Why turn it into a police report when you don't know the local political situation, or maybe you do, and you're all too aware of where this is going to go if you file the police report. So the incident is over, you walk away and you live your life.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that keeps getting missed in this whole argument about guns and carrying and gun violence, yada, 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 is the DGU, the defensive gun uses. I mean, even the lowest number in case study, which I think was the Harvard University study, says that there are 90,000 incidences per year of defensive gun uses. The highest one is up in the millions, and they say the median is somewhere around 2 million times a year. An average citizen uses their firearm to stop a crime. And in the vast, vast majority of cases, a shot is never fired. The mere presence of the firearms in the hands of a lawful citizen is enough to stop the crime, and yet nobody talks about that. It's the few thousand incidences where somebody is injured or killed by a firearm versus the millions of times that it's used to prevent something. And I think that that's just something that's either intentionally lost in the conversation because it doesn't match up with the narrative of mainstream media reporting and kind of the whole flow of things, or it's just something that they just overlook and maybe it's too, amorphous for them to be able to report on.
Well, I think there's a real philosophical divide here. There are people who are deeply uncomfortable, not just with the idea of armed citizens, but with the idea of personal responsibility, of people taking on the task of ending uncomfortable, dangerous situations, potentially putting themselves in danger. They want to think that there's a professional class that could be hired and uniformed and trained, and that will take this unpleasant responsibility away from us. And that isn't necessarily the case. We tried that. We're trying that right now, and we're not happy with the results. And these people who want to turn over and maintain the professional class don't want to see people in general taking on more responsibility, perhaps because they themselves are uncomfortable with that responsibility. They're uncomfortable with the idea of responsibility being laid on individuals in general across society. And so they're going to gloss over that, partially because you can't quantify it, because a lot of people very deliberately do not make sure that there is not a record of it, don't file a police report. And to a large extent also because it really doesn't square with the philosophical priors.
Right. Well, and we've seen that in the coverage. We've seen that in the coverage of Uvalde versus the coverage of the Greenwood shooting. The Greenwood shooting, somebody in my chat room this morning said NPR did a big piece on this the other day, and they barely mentioned the Good Samaritan in this at all. It's basically the whole coverages of the shooting, and then they barely mention it. And that seems to be the status quo on this. The stories that are big and flashy are the ones that happen with nobody responding. And anytime somebody stops someone in these regards, and you point out several in your piece here, it is silenced and sometimes even criticized. Yet in this case, in the Greenwood case, I found it interesting that everybody was lauding the Samaritan, from the police department to the local newspaper to even the mall itself, which has a no firearms policy on board, and it's posted in their malls. Yet both of these, the shooter and the Samaritan, ignored that. And because of that, the Samaritan was able to stop them. And the mall ownership actually even praised them on their webs. I mean, this calls into question the whole gun-free zone model to begin with, right? It just throws more.
Of course it does. Yeah, and of course it does. And I really give credit here to the mall owners. I mean, they had done the politically easy thing for years, which is to have a nominal policy in place. We've all seen the signs, guns not allowed on the premises. And it's easy to put up a sign like that and maintain that policy and not do anything else about it. But when it came down to someone having broken that policy and saved lives, they praised that person instead of raising the issue of the policy. I give them credit for that. And yeah, of course. I mean, if you have a gun-free zone, the people who are going to obey that are people who by and large intend well and obviously are law-abiding.
Right.
You're not going to have any impact on those who never intended to be, to abide by the law and who intend ill towards others. Right. They're going to treat a gun-free zone as a fishing area because there's a high probability that very few people, if any, are going to be able to defend themselves in such an area.
J.D. Tuccille is our guest contributing editor for Reason Magazine. We need to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to continue with talking about a little bit about Greenwood and also about J.D.'s other piece that he wrote recently about the police in general and the whole call to ban the guns and the opposing call to back the blue, and how those are kind of not just they're kind of at odds with each other, but also they kind of all move in the same direction, which is problematic. We're going to talk with JD about that here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show continues. Don't go anywhere. We'll return in a moment. Don't forget to join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. If you want to see in between the commercial breaks and see a little bit behind the scenes, that's where we're going to be at. We'll return with more in just a moment. And J.D. Tuccille from Reason Magazine on your home for common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show.
We're in the break right now. J.D. Tuccille is our guest. J.D., sorry about the Arizona-Texas thing. I apparently been talking too much to Jacob Sullum because he's in Texas, and that was my...
He's in Texas. Yeah. We both have cactus, so,
And I just remember that picture of you and your son outside in the arid desert with the guns, and so in my mind that was locked into Texas. So I apologize. But, it seems like a lot more people are moving from the hallowed halls of elitism in California and New York and moving down to the Southwest, out there. It seems like a lot of your guys, your writers and fellow contributors are all moving down to that area. Must be nice down there.
It's lovely here. I mean, I love living in Arizona. I know Jacob has been a Texas fan for a long time. It's a good piece of the earth to live in, and of course the cost of living is a lot more reasonable, especially if you're making your life on an editor or writer's salary. So,
yeah, well, life's a little bit more free. I mean, we love it up here in Alaska, and we don't obviously, we've got a little bit of a different weather pattern and everything else. But just tell your friends if they ever want to decide to move out of the hallowed halls of elitism that Alaska is always welcoming to them, and we're not always covered with snow and igloos. There are some.
No. Yeah, I love Alaska. I honeymooned up there. Backpack the Casuga Ridge Trail, did some glacier hiking. Beautiful piece of the world.
No, it's absolutely absolutely gorgeous up here, especially the further south you go, the milder the winters get. So definitely not too bad. 104 degrees. I don't know how you do it, my friend.
I don't know how I do it either.
I know. I mean, seriously, up here in Alaska, it's like, I mean, I can always put a sweater on if it gets cold, but I can't get much more naked than naked. You know what I mean? And nobody wants to see me running around in a Speedo at 105 degrees because I'm too hot, So anyway, it's good for you. Have you, tell us a little bit here. We got about 4 minutes or so. Your journey into firearms manufacturing. We've had you on the program before to talk about your experiment and exercise with your son on creating a firearm and building your own rifle and things like that. Has that progressed at all? Have you guys are you guys taking that up as a hobby? Have you done anything else with it?
We haven't made another rifle. I do have an 80% receiver, another one that we plan on building out when the opportunity arises. And I got some other parts, but we haven't made that step. I mean, I found it daunting to begin with. I started it because I've been writing for years about Cody Wilson, initially 3D printing a pistol,
right,
and then the evolution of that technology, and then CNC machines. And I had friends who do it. I mean, it's a pretty common hobby around here. And I'm like, what? I'm writing about this. I really got to take the plunge. And I got a workshop. Why not, get a little more gear? And I got a son who loves, hands-on hobbies. And I've been making him do stuff he doesn't necessarily want to do. Here, kid, dismantle the toilet and rebuild it. Let's do something really cool.
Right.
And we did that. And, we had that out shooting. I've had my 81-year-old mother out shooting that rifle with her boyfriend. And it's really great fun. So we are going to do it again. But, no, that was the one-off so far, although we've got an 80% receiver to go with for another build sometime soon.
Well, and of course, now with the recent changes from the ATF, it's kind of throwing that whole industry into such chaos. Whether you can buy blanks or tools, or you can't buy them together, or what constitutes a firearm. I mean, it's gotten so murky. And you mentioned Cody Wilson and 3D printing. I don't know if you've had a chance to interview or talk with Rob Pincus he's from the Personal Defense Network and ICE Combat Training. He has become a huge advocate of 3D printing different types of firearms, and he actually participates in a maker's match where they actually go out and shoot the pistols in competition that they've created. And he jumped in with both feet last year and has just been going crazy with it. If you want more information on the maker side, the non-professional, not Cody Wilson, just the average guy doing it, let me know. I'll put you in contact with him. He does some amazing stuff.
I'd love to. You want to forward that to me? I think that'd be great to follow up on.
Yeah,
especially since these innovative designs that aren't based on existing models, but they're going and doing some creative stuff.
Oh, it's crazy.
Best,
I mean, I've seen pistol, things that end up looking like small short-barreled rifles or personal defense weapons based on a platform, based on a Glock or whatever, and then they put it all together, and these things look like space guns. I mean, it's amazing what they're doing with some of this stuff. And it looks like a lot of fun. So we'll get you back on that. Before I let you, we're about a minute out here. Anything else you're working on here that we need to know about, JD, that you got coming out in the next couple days that people might be interested in?
Well, my latest column today is about the Republican Party becoming a political party again, and with actual other candidates being considered that are not named Donald Trump.
Right.
And that there's a sign that they might be returning to policies and ideas and not just a cult of personality. So, I mean, no, it hasn't happened yet, but there's signs of life there. We'll have to see if that actually takes off.
Well, I'll be watching that with bated breath to see what happens there for sure. Absolutely. All right, we're going to continue with JD Tuccille. We're going to talk again a little bit about more about some of the specifics of Greenwood and how it shows what we need to pay attention to, and then we'll talk about the whole undermining of the call to ban guns and back the blue. JD Tuccille is our guest. The Michael Dukes Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's get to it. All right, welcome back to the program. We're continuing now with JD Tuccille, contributing editor for Reason Magazine. You can find his writings and much more at Reason.com. If you haven't gone over there and made that part of your daily reading, you are missing out, my friends. JD, we were just talking about the comparatives between Uvalde, the shooting there, and what happened at the Greenwood Mall. Let's get into some of the specifics here in the Greenwood Mall. Again, this is kind of the case study for those of us who've advocated for armed personal defense and for citizen defense. And it kind of, again, throws into the face, right into the face of people who are so anti-gun that you're not going to stop bad people from doing bad things. The only thing that stops them is good people. And this is kind of that case study for that.
It absolutely is. I mean, Elijah Dickens stepped up. One guy trained to shoot, well, not even trained to shoot. He went shooting with his grandfather, who taught him how to shoot. No military background, no police background, ends what would have been a mass shooting inside of in about 15 seconds. Admittedly, 3 people did lose their lives, but it could have been a lot worse. We know it could have been a lot worse because we contrast this with the Uvalde situation, where 376 police officers stood around for over an hour, 73 minutes plus, before anybody intervened and ended a shooting that killed 19 children and 2 teachers. And that's quite a contrast. And it's
right.
And at a time when you've got people saying they want to disarm the public, and you've got their nominal opponents saying that we should back the blue and put our faith in the police force. This emphasizes how important personal responsibility is and how the advocacy for gun control actually isn't that far off for the cheerleading for professionalized policing.
Right.
They both of those positions, even though they're not held by politicians nominally in opposition to one another, both those positions are abrogations of individual responsibility. And if you have people who take on responsibility for their safety and that of their neighbors and that of the community, they're exercising a personal responsibility that kind of rejects both advocacy of gun control, that which would disarm the public, and advocacy of back the blue, that which would professionalize keeping the public safe in the hands of government employees. So I think that what we saw here in the hands of Elijah Dickens at the Greenwood Park Mall was something that is an exercise of individual responsibility, of personal freedom, and doesn't really help the arguments of either the back the blue or the gun control advocates. I'm
going to agree with you that I think that this really falls back to an abdication of personal responsibility. I think that is probably some of the prime movers here, but you do make the interesting point in your other piece, which you have talking about how the report undermines, the Uvalde report undermines both the gun ban and the back the blue. And again, I want to be clear, just like you were earlier. Look, there are good police officers out there. There's no doubt about it. The problem is that there's also bad police officers, and they really don't get called out or are held responsible. So this idea that we should somehow, venerate the police as they're the only ones that are able to do it for it. They're the only ones that have the training, the only ones that can do it on the right side, and yet on the left side, it's no firearms for anybody except the police, except for, of course, when we want to defund the police. I mean, it's so confusing. The bottom line is we've seen it in action here. These literally holding these two things up side by side shows you that you can't hold the police up as infallible because, of course, they're human. They're not infallible, and their track record is pretty abysmal when you look at it overall. And you can't vilify average citizens because it seems like, first of all, statistically, concealed carry permit holders are less likely to commit crimes than anybody, including police officers. So, I mean, the facts don't hold up when you scrutinize it.
They don't. They absolutely don't. And as you said, there are very good police officers out there. There are a lot of cops who are embarrassed and angry about the conduct of Uvalde. But if their bad colleagues are going to pin them to the floor if they try to act, if they're going to stand in the way, that obviously that prevents them from exercising the authority that they would need to do to protect us. And we also, as members of the public, don't know which kind of cop is going to show up.
Right.
Who is it? Who's on the other end of that 911 call? And that we've got to wait for them to arrive. So personal responsibility, as it comes down to it, kind of rebuts both the back the blue position and the gun control position, because you can't just professionalize safety and hand it off to these amorphous government employees of unknown quality, of unknown moral fiber, and just hope for the best, because we've seen the best doesn't happen time and again.
Well, and again, the whole argument on both sides, but especially on the more progressive pro-gun control side, seems very schizophrenic. I mean, at the one point they say nobody should have guns except for the government, the police, the military, and yet in the next breath they talk about things like defunding the police and things like that. So it seems like their messaging is really unclear. What is it? And I think, again, it does boil down to, I don't really want to take responsibility for myself. I want somebody else to come and take responsibility for me, but not him, maybe him, but not him. I mean, it's just, again, it's that transference of responsibility.
Well, exactly so. I mean, who do they think it is going to enforce gun control? I mean, it's going to be armed police, right?
Right.
And they're going to have to be fairly substantially supported if they're going to take on a role like that. So I think it is a rejection of personal responsibility. It's an overall discomfort. And the message that they put out really doesn't make sense. It's internally contradictory, because you either, if you're going to disarm the public, you then have to take on that back to blue position and embrace it and say, we're going to have the state in charge. It's going to be essentially all powerful. It's going to take on this responsibility. If you both disarm the public and disband or defund your professionalized police force, it's really not obvious who it is supposed to prevent all the crimes out there that we don't want to be committed against the public.
Right, absolutely. And of course, I think this really highlights the fact that we definitely need some police reform. I mean, there's a variety of areas where I think that needs to take place. The whole issue of qualified immunity, the holding them responsible for certain things, the fact that we do have good police, but they are singled out and vilified for calling out the bad police, all that kind of stuff. I think it shows that we do need reform in many areas of law enforcement. And somebody in the chat room says, why not defend the police and leave the public armed? I think that what we should do is reform the police and leave the public armed. What do you say?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I do think we need a law enforcement element. I mean, and we can discuss exactly, and there's legitimate discussions about the parameters of the responsibilities. Do we want to ask them to be social workers too? Do we want to ask them to do these other things? But also, we want them to be members of the public. We want them to be part of the community that they protect. And increasingly over the last couple of decades, several decades, we have militarized them. We've removed them from the public because we're afraid of petty corruption, them getting free lunch or free beer at the local bar. So you stick them in a car, and now all of a sudden they're alienated from the community, and it's more like they're an occupying force than like just people who happen to have a job, like the street sweeper and the dentist and everybody else. And that, I think, is not helpful in any way. If you're not a member of the community, it's very difficult to participate in it, protect it, and value the lives and property of those who live there. We need to reform it. We need to make sure they're members of the community, and we definitely need to get rid of the qualified immunity. Of course, they have to be liable for their actions. If they misbehave, like anybody else, we have to be able to hold them liable.
Absolutely.
And if we're afraid of frivolous lawsuits, then we address our legal system. We can also reform civil justice.
Yeah.
We can definitely do that. But police should not be immune to liability for their actions.
No, and we could go. That's a whole nother show right there. Qualified immunity and everything else. JD Tuccille, contributing editor for Reason Magazine. You can find him at reason.com. JD, thank you so much for coming on today. You made the day a lot brighter. I appreciate you coming with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, folks, we got more coming up. Hour 2 dead ahead. The Michael Dukes Show, Firearms Friday. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. All right. JD Tuccille has left the building. Not helpful in any way is wrong. An occupying force is exactly what the elites need and want, says Chris over on Twitch. That's probably what they do want. And again, there's a whole thing built into this. We should do a whole show on qualified immunity, because we've seen instance after instance where things that are blatantly and obviously wrong have been allowed to take place with no repercussions to law enforcement, and it encourages the bad actors to do bad things. The bad apples that are in every barrel. We always hear about that, right? Well, police are good in general. There are bad apples in every barrel. What they don't tell you is the rest of it. If you don't take the bad apples out of the barrel, they will cause all the other apples to spoil. Right? You've seen it in a bowl of fruit. You got one piece that's got a bruise on it and it's getting nasty, and the next thing you know, the whole bowl is contaminated because you didn't take it out. And that's what's happening That's what's happening, I think, in law enforcement in a lot of ways. And because we've seen it. We've seen that whistleblowers and people who call out the bad behavior who are within the law enforcement community, they become outcast. They become vilified. They are criticized. They are hounded. Is that whole fraternity, don't cross the thin blue line kind of thing. I am a full supporter of police, but I am also a supporter of police who obey and follow the law and who do not take on that occupying force kind of mentality. And he's right. Where is the beat cop that used to walk the beat, that used to walk around, that knew Mr. Jones the baker and Miss Swanson the florist and knew the restaurants and everything else? He's right. They putting him in cars and causing him to drive around, and it does become more of an occupying force than anything else. I think that's an interesting comparative for discussion. All right, let me go back to the chat room and see what else you guys have got to say. Jeannie says you all need to tune into Armed Scholar on YouTube, legal analysis of the SCOTUS ruling regarding firearms. I'll go check him out, the Armed Scholar. I'll go see what they have to say about it. It's like yelling at your neighbor's dog for pooping in your yard. It's just words. Sometimes words just don't stop bad things from happening. Yep, exactly. Good day, good morning. Texas Attorney General lawsuit against ATF's cracking down on Texas suppressors is going on. Thank you, Sean, for telling me about that. Feel free to post any links you want on that. Any of you read that piece from Hand-Waving Freakoutery making the same points about muting the praise for Dickens? I haven't read it yet. I love to read that guy, but I always have to have like a quiet spot to do it, Brian, because I really want to. I mean, he's talking about Hand-Waving Freakoutery, which is a Substack blog, and the guy always makes some very, very interesting points. I mean, just some really. I think, insightful. I don't always agree with him, but I think he makes some really insightful stuff. I have not read it, but he is, again, it's some deep stuff. So whenever I do it, I want it to be like, I want to be a quiet room. I don't want to be working. I don't want to be distracted. And so that is an interesting time. All right. Cops and ATF were blah, blah, blah. Thugs, what happened to innocent until proven guilty? Commenting on that. Hunky Lee running for Senate. I'm waiting on the phone. Hunky, I'm gonna ask you to call back. Today is my day for firearms. Today is not the day to interview candidates. I saw your email, and we'll have you back on the program. We had you on the program here a few weeks ago. We'll have you back on the program here in the next couple weeks. But I've got a pretty full dance card for the next 10, 15 days as we get closer to the primary. But I'm going to try and get you back in there. But I'm not going to talk to you today about your candidacy. So, but I will respond to your email. We'll get things squared away. So I'm going to clear you out of the phone lines there, and we're going to open up the whole phone lines for gun Q&A. That's what we're going to do this morning. Feel free to participate that. I'm not old enough to remember that time, says Chris on Twitch, talking about the cops walking around knowing everybody, and all that kind of stuff. He said, I kind of just thought it was a myth. No. I mean, that was what they used to call it. Today they call it community policing, but back in the day, that was just policing. That was just, you were a peace officer. You wandered around, in your uniform, and you said hi to everybody, and you walked the streets, and you investigated crimes as they came up, but it was, you were involved. And many communities, you're seeing them are trying to go back to that, where they have cops that are beat cops, that walk the streets and are involved in the community. And that seems to be having some success, and it's and I think it's one of the reasons why, like you said, we are so divorced from them in so many ways. That is a good thing to do there. All right, let's see. We're about a minute out. Good morning, Jack. Thanks for coming on board. Do me a favor. Would you guys do this for me? I see that we've got 4 shares. There's 25 people here in the chat room, and only 4 of you have shared it. Would you share the show? Would you do that for me? That would sure be awesome. If you'd hit that share button, if you'd like the show page, if you'd follow the show page, if you're on YouTube, if you do all that, you could share it off of you. Did you know that? You could share YouTube to your Facebook? Why don't you share it to your Facebook page and then subscribe and ring the little bell thing there to make sure that you get notifications when I go live every morning so you know where I'm at. In case Facebook doesn't work, you'll always know that you have YouTube to back it up. So if you would do that, that would be awesome. If you haven't shared it, please share and do all that stuff. Do all that stuff together. All right, it's time to get things ready to rock and roll. Let's go. Hour 2 is dead ahead. The Michael Dukes Show, Common Sense Radio.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
The Michael Dukes Show.
I have 2 guns, 1 for each of you.
Firearms Friday.
As Thomas Jefferson stated, it is the right and duty of the people to be at all times armed.
Say hello to my little friend.
I say that the Second Amendment is, in order of importance, the First Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Not be infringed. Firearms.
From my cold, dead hands.
Friday.
Here's my rifle, this is my gun. This is for fighting, this is for fun.
Firearms Friday.
Firearms Friday, your chance to sound off on issues of a Second Amendment nature right here on the big radio program. We appreciate you guys being part of it and joining us here on the show today. It is that one day a week where we get a chance to talk about issues related to the Second Amendment and to inform and to educate you on a lot of these things. Because the news media is not doing it. The news media has, again, over and over and over again, shown that they do not have they have the wherewithal. They probably have the resources. They just don't have the interest in covering a lot of these things in a fair, equitable, and factual manner. And that's one of the reasons why Firearms Friday was kind of born out, was to try and demystify the firearm and to counteract some of the things that you see in the mainstream media time and time and time again. So today is the day that you get a chance to sound off on your own and talk about things. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines for what we call Gun Q&A, which is questions and answers, obviously. But it's all about firearms, and we will talk with you about anything that's firearms related. We will answer questions related to firearms and gun rights. The mantra and the creed of Gun Q&A on Firearms Friday is that there is no such thing as a dumb gun question. I mean, you may feel like it's a dumb question, but we don't think that here on the program. We being the royal we. Me, I don't think that. I think that any question regarding a firearm that I can answer honestly and truthfully, I want to do that because I want more people to become part of the gun culture. And that doesn't mean that I know everything, okay? I'm pretty good. I know a lot. My Google foo is strong, but I also have the smartest listeners in the world. So if I don't know an answer to something, somebody out here in the listening audience probably does, and probably somebody in the chat room has an answer. So we'll get that. We'll get those things answered as best we can. And we're trying to demystify the firearm because Look, ignorance breeds fear. J.D. Tuccille was our guest in the last hour from Reason Magazine, and he was talking about how a lot of this, in his opinion, and I agree with it, stems from the lack of the lack of will to take personal responsibility for your actions. This is from people who don't want other people to have guns, or are afraid. It seems to be that a lot of it comes from that lack of willingness to take personal responsibility. And a lot of the reasoning that you hear out of there is JD said, is because people are uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable about the idea of armed citizens. And I don't know why they would be uncomfortable, other than the fact that ignorance breeds fear. Ignorance of something breeds fear. And as an example, like if you walked into a workshop and somebody said, here's a skill saw, go, and you've never used a skill saw in your life. Now, it's a tool, but it can be very dangerous if you don't use it properly. And so you are very, very leery, or a chainsaw. You've never used a chainsaw. And somebody just hands it to you and says, go buck up that log. It can be very, very scary. But with a little training, with a little time, with a little explanation, and just a few minutes practice, you can get pretty good with either one of those tools in just a short period of time. The same is true for firearms. Yes, they're a tool, and yes, they can be dangerous to yourself and others, but with a little training, a little practice, and the next thing you know, it becomes almost second nature to you to be able to use those things without any kind of fear. And I think that's the biggest problem we have today, is that people are just fearful. Their main intake on information from guns is, the entertainment industry and the news media. And of course, what do you see in the entertainment industry? You see people shooting each other and being shot, and guns and how dangerous they are. You see the news media talking about firearms in such a way that in many times it's misinformation. It's not real information, but they're fostering that fear of the unknown. So Firearms Friday is here to demystify, to educate, to inform, to enlighten, to entertain. Wow, there's a lot of stuff in there baked into Firearms Friday. So we're opening up gun Q&A right now. I want to say today's program is being brought to you by our friends over there at Satellite West. You can find them at satellitewest.com for your cellular, satellite communications need, VHF radio, whatever it is that you need. Satellite West can hook you up over at satellitewest.com. We're going to open up those phone lines right now at 907-433-3150, 907-433-3150. Let's go over to the phones and get things started this morning to see what you have to say. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Well, Michael, it's Fred in Rhode Island. How you been?
Well, hello, my friend. How are you this morning?
Oh, wonderful. The balmy 90 degrees over here in New England, which is very seasonably unusual.
Yeah,
but,
it's a little warm.
It's like everything else in the summer, I guess.
Little warm.
Something new. A little. Okay. Well, anyway, the reason why I called is, you mentioned the news media. The media, historically, they have a responsibility. The First Amendment, you have the right to say whatever they want to say. However, they have a responsibility to do it correctly, fairly, and evenly, and across the board. And they choose to ignore that. And I think that I believe that they are totally linked in with the woke left and the Progressive Party and the Green New Deal crap and all that other nonsense that's going on from the other side, which doesn't make any sense at all to anybody with any common sense. However, when did they ever have any common sense?
Right.
So it's really, we're just being, it's kind of like, dragging the bull around by the ring in his nose is what they're trying to do. And, they just pick and choose the subjects they want to talk about or have to talk about because they are in link with the wokes. And there's no ifs, ands, buts about it. That's just too obvious to ignore the fact that they are on board with all this woke nonsense. And, they are as much a part of the problem as the problem itself, the way I see it.
No, I would agree. And again, that's really the genesis of, why Firearms Friday became a thing, is because I got sick and tired of watching the news media with either lazy reporting or intentional misreporting of the facts go out there over and over and over again. I mean, I got so sick and tired of it. And, I used to think that it was lazy and, they were looking for the easy route. But with some of the outlets, it became apparent to me that they just didn't even care. It was not even unintentional. It was just like kind of blasé. We'll just throw anybody up there in the chair who can talk clearly for 5 or 10 minutes on the topic, whether or not they're qualified and whether or not the information they're putting out there is even correct and legal. And that's part of the problem that, has been kind of fostering this fear or this adverse reaction to firearms in the hands of citizens for years.
Well, I think it goes beyond that, though. I think it's deliberate. I think it is absolutely deliberate, crafted, and put together, with the entire, crazy agenda, crazy progressive agenda in mind, and it's deliberate. As I say, they are as much of the problem as the problem itself. They are the problem, and they're a major contributor to the problem. And what we should have done 20 years ago, when we had the opportunity, is to put in a opposing media network source. That way, you have like 3 or 4 major networks in the country,
right.
As far as media, and the rest of them are small time, but they are effective, collectively they are effective. However, not as effective as ABC, NBC, CNN, and the rest of the CBS, the rest of them, and they're all being controlled. They're all being manipulated and controlled. With a big dollar sign from the corporation themselves and outside sources,
right.
And this and that and the other thing, and billionaire contributions, and little wink.
Well,
what they call the halls of justice. The only justice is in the halls itself. That kind of nonsense.
Right. Well, I think we saw that, Fred. I mean, that was really the rise of Fox News, was as an alternative point of view for media.
They've been taken over.
But again,
they've been taken over.
Yeah,
they've been taken over by a bunch of wolves. Right.
Yeah, but even in the last 10 years, we've seen Fox News kind of fall apart. And again, the one that really stands out to me was I was talking about it earlier, the Sutherland Spring shooting in Texas. That was the first time I ever saw a Fox News commentator, Greg Jarrett in this case, get up there and just start blathering off at the mouth about stuff that he knew absolutely nothing about, but saying it with such conviction that I know that there were a lot of people out there who were going, oh, yeah, right, he's right on, not knowing at all what he was talking about. So, I think the free market is what we need to have go in there. I don't think we need to mandate that there needs to be a different network or anything else. But I think that Brian in the chat room makes a very valid point this morning when he says it's all about clicks. And we've seen that. We've seen that in the coverage. The Greenwood Mall shooting was not as attractive to the news media outlets because it didn't fit their narrative. It was a shooting that was stopped, and the tragedy sells, right? We know that, and they're looking for that, so that's why they'll cover something like Uvalde or the YouTube shooting or Parkland or something like that. They'll cover that wall to wall for days. And yet, a shooting where the culprit is stopped by an armed citizen gets barely a mention in the press because it doesn't fit their narrative and it doesn't allow them to click, get more clicks and get more eyeballs on their stuff. And I think that's part of the problem as well.
Well, like I say, rights and responsibility have to go hand in hand, and they're not going to be fair about it. And someone's got to step up to the plate and even the odds, because we're getting buried. We are getting smothered here. In the fact that every time you turn around and try to do something right in this country, all they do is kick you in the teeth. And it is wrong. It's just absolutely, totally wrong. It doesn't make a difference whether it's firearms or energy or price of gas or just living conditions in general, or having Big Brother breathe down your neck on everything you want to do, every aspect of your life. This
right.
Actually, it's time to wake up and smell the coffee here and do something.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that, Fred. I appreciate you calling in this morning, and come on, and thank you for being part of it today. All right. All right. Oops. Sorry. Cut you off there, Fred, but that's what it is. That leaves all 4 lines open if you'd like to sound off. Gun Q&A all day. I also have some news stories and headlines, which we'll get into here in just a few moments, and we will continue our discussion. It is the Michael Duke Show, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. We'll continue with more in just a moment. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Michael Duke Show if you want to be part of the chat room there. I got a couple questions out of the chat room as well that I'm going to get to here in just a hot second. We'll return with more. Phone lines are open at 433-3150, 907-433-3150. Firearms Friday continues right after these messages.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm less inclined towards the conspiracy and more inclined to the exploitation of existing conditions. Yeah, I don't believe it's some big... I agree with you, Brian. I don't think that it's some big overarching conspiracy. And I agree with you not just because you bought one of my Common Sense Core mugs. And I saw your post on that, by the way, pimping it out. That's a big mug, isn't it? I wanted a big mug. That's what I mean. I when I chose those mugs, I was looking for a big cup of coffee. I wasn't looking for some little teeny tiny diner counter coffee. I wanted a big cup of coffee, and I that's what I love that. But I don't agree with you just because you bought some of the coffee mugs. I agree with you because I don't think it is any kind of big overarching conspiracy. I think it is an exploitation of existing conditions. I think that it is, again, we're looking for headlines. We're looking for success. I mean, first of all, how do you categorize? How do you, how do you track success in something like news media? You know, it used to be ratings and eyeballs in front of the televisions and circulation numbers and things like that. Today, it's based on the number of clicks and time spent viewed on the pages and things like that. That's how you quantify success in today's environment. And, of course, with the proliferation of things that are on the internet, different news outlets, bloggers, commentators, everything else, you're competing in a much larger space than you were before when you kind of had a monopoly, whether it was over-the-air broadcast television or whether it was cable. There was a finite number of competitors in the space. Well, now with the internet, everybody's competing for the same set of eyeballs. And so that's when you get to the clickbaity headlines. That's when you get to the highest, most, the most outrageous, the most, lurid headlines that you're looking at. That's what causes people to be drawn. So again, I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think it's just it's a nature of the beast at this point is that they're looking to get more headlines. And so, again, the more lurid the headline, the more likely is somebody's going to pop off and go read your article and spend time on your site. And so that's how they're tracking and quantifying success these days. So there you go. Hey, I would invest in some swag, said Jimmy, if you had some gas cards. Gas cards? What? Jimmy? Well, I mean, I don't even know. How would that even work? How would that even work? Just get yourself a Michael Duke Show coffee mug or a T-shirt and rep the show that way and show your support that way. That's the only way you could do it. They are big coffee mugs, though. I don't have one here in front of me, but I think they're 15-ounce coffee mugs, if I recall correctly, the size of them. They are deep and delicious, and it's a good, too. Oh, you got a connection. I know you do. Man, if I had a connection, I paid $5.69 a gallon for gas the other day. If I had a connection, I would be using it. I guarantee I would be using that connection to get the job done. Am I building a refinery? Yeah, no. Yeah, good luck with that, right? Good luck with that. All right. Let me see if there's anything else I missed this morning so far. Real simple, says Jimmy. Trooper in front of me, I will not be speeding. Just the presence of law enforcement is enough to deter. That's what we were talking about with the community policing. Having a beat cop in the community, being there as a visual presence, and then having relationships with people in the community as well. That's a great. That's the great part of it. I mean, that's the difference between a peace officer and a law enforcement officer, right? We've talked about that in the past. It used to be that we had peace officers here to bring the peace, not law enforcement officers who were only here to enforce the law. And I think that's the difference between the occupying force and the other. All right, we're coming back to it. One final segment here before we get to Willie Waffle and our weekend movie reviews. Let's dive down into it. The Michael Dukes Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. All right, here we go. Continuing on, hour 2, one final segment before we go to break. It is the Michael Dukes Show. We're ready to jump down into it here. If you would like to call in, feel free to drop us a line. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say this morning. Anything of a Second Amendment nature is A-OK in my book. Now, somebody asked, I think it was Dan on YouTube asked a question, and this is part of the Q&A, and so I want to go over here and answer, wanted to go ahead and answer the question here. Dan says, off of YouTube, he's watching on YouTube this morning, what are some carry positions for a heavier guy who has to sit a lot for a living? It needs to be concealed. This is something that I might have a passing familiarity with, being a heavier guy who has to sit a lot. It needs to be concealed. Of course, one of the favorite positions for many folks out there, especially those of the skinnier variety, is what they call appendix carry, which is, right in the front of your belt. Obviously, those of us who've got a little extra lovin' going on, who've got a little bit of the Dunlop disease, where our belly's Dunlopped over the front of our belts, that's not a good solution. My solution is I carry at kind of the kidney, not the appendix position, more the kidney position. I would carry, at the 3, 4, 5 o'clock position. Around the outside of my belt, and still be able to, small in the back, depending on how, I'm pretty broad in the shoulders, and so to reach into the small of my back is a little more uncomfortable and not as fast. And if you place a pistol in a holster at the small of your back, sitting on it for hours can be, well, let's say uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. So I find that if you're right-handed, carrying at the 4 o'clock position, 4:30, somewhere in there, makes it fairly convenient and comfortable for you to sit in a car or in a chair, even if it has arms or a console next to you, that nestles up pretty good. If you're left-handed, that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of the 7:30 position. If front is 12 noon and back is 6 o'clock, then you know what I mean. That is a handy position to have, and it still makes it readily accessible for the most part. Now, Is it as accessible as somebody who is appendix carrying, like if you're sitting down in a vehicle, or is it as accessible as somebody who's appendix carrying? No, but if you are a big enough guy that you've got a belly and you can't appendix carry to begin with, it's a moot point. You're looking for the least worst solution for that. And so it's there you go. That's how it goes right there. All right. That is the answer to that question. What else? If there are any more questions in the chat room, yeah, especially if you have a hammer-fired pistol. Trying to appendix carry with even a little bit of a belly and a hammered-fired pistol, like, for example, a Colt 1911, it's not necessarily always comfortable. I find that strong side carry in the 4 o'clock position, a 4:30 position, somewhere in there, is much more preferable for me personally than for most. But maybe you guys have got a second position. Now, there's other options, of course, whether it's a shoulder holster. I mean, do you wear a suit coat all day, or do you wear vests or something like that? You could always wear a shoulder holster. I mean, that's still a viable option. You could wear a cross-draw holster if you are wearing a coat to button it up, but if it has to be concealed, you're probably better off with the shoulder holster or the side holster. Shoulder holsters are very convenient for if you sit a lot all day, or if you drive a lot, you're in a vehicle or something like that, because it is always accessible right there under. But that also means that you have to wear some kind of overgarment, right? So whether it's a suit coat or a vest or something like that, if you want it to be concealed, that is the important part. But it is a lot more convenient to have a shoulder holster than a waist holster if you're sitting a lot. So just keep those things in mind. And you could mix it up. You could do a little bit of either. I personally like to go with one method and stick with it simply because it is a habit thing. I like to be able to be in the habit and train muscle memory and do that kind of stuff. So it's totally up to you. In hot climates, shoulder holsters, not as convenient because, again, you have to wear some kind of overgarment and do stuff like that. Big Michael Duke show sweater vest with the Firearms Friday logo. That might defeat the whole purpose of carrying concealed if you're got a big Firearms Friday logo emblazoned on your chest of your sweater or your vest. That might kind of screw up your whole thing there. But try it out. I don't know, Dan. I hope that answered your question. The biggest thing for me is to make sure that if you are going to conceal carry, especially in a more unusual configuration, expect that you're going to have to spend some money. I have all of my holsters custom made by my friend Kevin up at 40 Below Kydex in Fairbanks. He makes my holsters for me. They're a little pricier than you would go down to Cabela's or someplace and buy something. They're a little pricier, but they definitely make the difference. I have my pistol is or my holster rather is a inside the waistband tuckable. So what that means is that it has J hooks on the outside of the holster, and you slip it down inside your waistband between you and your belt, and it clips on the outside of the belt. So the whole pistol and the whole assembly is inside your waistband, and then the J hooks allow you to tuck your shirt around the outside of the pistol and tuck it in behind the holster on the other side between your holster and your pants. And so you still have it. It's still secure. It's still concealed. And now you have a shirt over it, so you don't have to wear a secondary garment over the top of it. You could do it with a polo shirt or a bowling shirt or a T-shirt, depending on how tight the T-shirt is. You don't want it to print on the outside if you're looking to carry it concealed. But that is my solution for that. And if you're going to wear a shoulder holster, shoulder holsters are going to be it's going to be a much more expensive proposition for a quality shoulder holster. because generally speaking, they're all made out of leather. I have seen some hybrid Kydex, Cordura Kydex leather shoulder holsters. I've never owned one, but it does sound like an interesting. It does sound like an interesting. Anyway, it's good. GS Holsters in Wasilla. I've seen some of his holsters. He makes some good holsters. GS Holsters, Quick Lock Holsters in Wasilla, 40 Below Kydex in Fairbanks. There are plenty of folks around the state who are doing custom holsters, and it's one of the things that we talk about in our rule of three. If you decide you're going to go forth armed, that there's the rule of three is that you should spend 3 times the amount of money on the whole package overall that you would spend on the firearm. So if you're going to spend $500 on the pistol, you should also spend another $500 on training to use that pistol, training classes, concealed carry classes, everything else. And then you should spend another $500 on quality accessories. And I mean, I cannot tell you, especially if you're going to carry concealed every day, I cannot tell you how important it is to have a good, high quality holster. It's imperative. It will make your life so. I have had crappy holsters. And having crappy holsters and carrying around a large pistol all day can be exhausting, and just an inconvenient, and everything else. I would include in those accessories, by the way, I would also include a good belt, like a duty belt. I just had a belt made by Custom Leatherworks in Fairbanks this last fall. This spring, I guess, I had a brand new belt made. Forest green, beautiful, thick, stiff, 2.5-inch duty type belt, stained to my perfect color that I wanted, and it has been incredibly comfortable for a big, nice, thick leather belt that holds my pistol just perfectly. Or you can get a rigger's belt. There's a lot of different things you can do. But anyway, Dan, I hope that you can see it. Yeah, if you go over and see Kevin at 40 Below, tell him you want if you're going to do inside the waistband at the 4 o'clock position, tell him you want the same kind of holster that he made for me. I brought him all the things that I wanted, and he built it for me. You tell him that that's what you want, and it would be good. How do people clip a holster on a hip belt part of a backpack out hunting? Shoulder holster kind of sucks with a big pack on. That's why if I'm hunting, I'm carrying it on a chest rig. Man Gear Alaska makes a beautiful, beautiful chest rig that carries large frame revolvers right in the middle of your chest. So you can wear it in your backpack. It's right there. It's out of the way. Again, a lot of this stuff, folks, is situational. You got to remember, a lot of this stuff is absolutely situational. Chest rig is the only way that I would wear it out in the bush, especially if I'm wearing a backpack. That's the best way to do it. Well, wow, that came right up to the line here. We got to go. The Michael Dukes Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more after this. Willie Waffle, our next guest.
Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
All right. Continuing on here. I have more holsters than pants, says Jeannie. Well, I don't. I've only got a couple holsters because I know what I like and I stick with one. Like I said, you could, varying the time of day or what's going on or the time of year, you could switch from, inside the waistband to shoulder holstered and everything else. I just am a fan of continuity because training a certain way, muscle memory and everything else. I like that. But it's, you do you, whatever is most comfortable for you. Safariland mid-rides are good for the woods also, said Daniel. I've never seen a Safariland mid-ride. Let me look at that. Let me Google that real quick. Let me Google that for you. Here, let me see what it looks like. Safariland mid-rides. Did I say? Yes, I meant Safariland mid-rides. Safariland mid-ride universal belt loop. Is this... outside, inside. Oh, I see. Yeah. No, that would not be bad. That is, again, mid-right. So it's not right up on the belt, and it's not a drop leg. It's right in the middle. Yeah, I could see that. Again, though, I like the idea of having it right here in front of me, between my chest, between my shoulders on my chest, with the straps going down each side of it. Anytime that I've got, and of course, it's been a decade or so since I've been hunting, but that's why I have my chest rig. My chest rig is for my big, large frame revolvers if I'm in the woods, right there on the middle of my chest, up and out of the way, not getting tangled, not getting hooked up on brush or anything else. So it makes it a lot easier for me. Vetter Holsters makes a leather belt with a polymer insert that stands up well to holsters. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen there's been several different manufacturers that have done that. Nan at Custom Leather Works in Fairbanks, who did an amazing job on this belt, by the way. I just love it. It's thick and stiff. This beautiful forest green that I asked her to make. Most belts are brown or black or what. I wanted a nice dark forest green belt because most of my clothes are green or gray or brown. That's kind of my color scheme. But she does a piece of stiffened leather inside of her. It's all leather, but it's the same kind of idea, keeping it stiff on the inside. Diamond D for a chest rig. Yeah, Diamond D does some good work, too. They do some amazing leather work as well. Man Gear Alaska, Rebecca over there at Man Gear Alaska, she makes a chest rig that is sold at Cabela's and Bass Pro, and it's a great holster. It's Cordura, made out of Cordura and nylon webbing and strapping. But she's got a really good track record with those as well. They're an amazing job. I mean, it's just an amazing job. So if you're looking for holsters, there's plenty. But again, the investment in a good holster is huge. It is a huge, huge thing. You should be investing in at least one good holster, and I think a belt. That I would include that in the $500. $150 to $200 of that $500 should be spent on a good belt and a good holster, at least one. And I'm a huge fan of polymer. I have some leather holsters, but leather, you got to maintain them. They don't like the sweat. They don't, Kydex don't care. Kydex just don't care. Take the gun out, wash it off in the sink, wipe it out, dry it down, put the gun back in. Just right there. It just don't care. And it rides there comfortably all day long. My holsters are actually curved in the wings, and then again they got those J-hooks on the outside, so they hug real tight to my body. Unless you were absolutely knew exactly where to look, you would have no idea that I'm carrying a large frame pistol. I don't carry, but if I did, I would like a chest rig myself. I only have long guns for hunting and home defense. Yeah, a chest rig, again, is very handy for a lot of situations. Not for concealability, but for every other consideration. It definitely makes a good choice as well. Did I hear Dukes is going green? Bluetooth must be getting wacky this morning. No, my belt is green. Green is my favorite color. I'm not... If you're watching the show, you've noticed that probably a lot of my schemes are dark grays, greens, tans. There's kind of earth colors. That's my thing. I like that. Look at this. This is green. This is my Homer Bookshop shirt, the mermaid Bookshop shirt. All right, we're coming up on it. We got Willie Waffle coming up here in just a hot second. Getting ready for that. Phone lines are ringing. You heard the ding. Time to get back to it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Don't forget to like and share, like and follow. Let's find out about the entertainment news. Here we go. All right. You ready? I mean, everything's still messed up and broken, but that's how it works around here. All right, we're ready to jump into it. Willie Waffle, wafflemovies.com, comes in for the weekend movie review, and he joins us right now. Good morning, my friend. How is you doing?
Messed up and broken. It sounds like how I feel in my last relationship.
Yes, that's I was actually describing your life. That was Willie.
Yeah, that's right.
Messed up and broken.
Let's talk about my current emotional state.
Yeah, exactly. All right, my friend. Well, we got a weekend's worth of stuff to get to. Let's start off with the entertainment news.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what we're going to start with. Should we start off with Netflix?
I think we should. Netflix is celebrating this week because they only lost 1 million viewers.
Yeah, they were projecting what, 2? And
two.
Yeah.
They thought they would lose 2.
Yeah.
So quarter 2 was the quarter where Netflix is like, listen, we're just telling all of you right up front, we're gonna get hammered. We're gonna lose 2 million subscribers. It's gonna be ugly, but don't worry, it'll get better. Well, it got better. It got better in a big way. They only lost about 1 million. It was 970,000, I think, is the official number. And this is causing celebrations at Netflix because they are convinced that by their projections they're going to add like 1 million subscribers in quarter 3 because, well, I don't know if you noticed, but quarter 3 is the one that had the second season of Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Or the second part of season 4.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
Exactly. No, I think that they definitely got some mileage out of that, and maybe that's their plan. Maybe that's why they're splitting this stuff up and spreading it out. They can say, look, we got another 1 million. I mean, they dropped off, then they came back, and then, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. People say, what, is it too expensive or whatever? I mean, but they're trying to find ways to make this work.
Yeah, I think Netflix is at a crossroads right now. And there's been a lot of talk about this over the past couple of weeks. Like, where are they going? What is going to happen? Right now, they are now promoting. They made an announcement. They will have that lower priced ad supported, which nice way to say we're going to have commercials tier in Netflix. They're going to roll that out in early 2023. They are projecting that maybe another 4.3 million people will join Netflix at that lower tier, and they think that that will bring them a profit as far as the cost that they put in plus the money they get from the advertising plus the lower subscription costs. But the thing that raised a lot of eyebrows is that the ads will be delivered by a Microsoft ad service.
Oh, Microsoft, not Google or anything. It's not Microsoft,
Google.
Right?
And that's got some people thinking, is it possible that Microsoft will buy Netflix? Because right now, Netflix is a big deal, but they're going up against some pretty big companies. Disney's pretty darn big. Amazon is pretty darn big.
Right.
And Netflix has been spending tons and tons and tons of money on content that frankly hasn't been working out lately. They have been adding a lot of they basically have a movie every Friday. And we don't talk about every movie they have every Friday because most of them stink. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. They've just had stinker after stinker after stinker, and they haven't had that next Stranger Things series. They haven't had that next Ozark series. I mean, probably the closest thing that's come to that is Bridgerton. They've been very successful with that.
Right.
But they really haven't had that next really big deal. And I know you're going to hate hearing this. There is a theory that breaking up Stranger Things into 2 parts and not dumping the entire season on one day might be the way for them to go to stretch out some of those subscribers.
Yeah, they did the same thing with Lucifer, which was another big show that they picked up and did really well with. They split it up into it was like 7 episodes, and then the last 2 episodes were like 4 months later or something. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know how I feel about that. It's just but of course, I'm also the guy that's like $14 a month, no big deal. I'll do that.
Right.
I'll do that for television and not have to worry watching it on my time and not have to worry about ads. I'll do that. But some people are a little more budget minded, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. And there's always going to be a market for that. And hey, if that's your market, great. I think it's wonderful. I'd rather see people pay less and put up with commercials to get something that they like. And I think that's what Netflix is coming to the conclusion that, there's just enough people out there where this makes financial sense for both sides. But I think there's a great deal of advantage if Microsoft buys Netflix. I fear that Netflix maybe has gone as far as it can. It's a really great company. They've done extremely well. They shocked the world. They changed the world in a lot of ways. But they are up against some bigger competitors that can spend them into the ground.
Yeah, it's true. They also haven't made any money since they started. I mean, they basically lose money. Everybody's buying Netflix stock, but why? Because, they're not making any money. It's a prestige thing more than anything else, but... Well, we'll have to see. Streaming is here to stay, whether Netflix stays in the game or not. It's here to stay. And, Amazon's been knocking it out of the park with some of their series. They've been doing some amazing stuff. And so,
oh, absolutely. And Disney Plus is rolling out an ad-supported tier this fall.
Yeah. So, it is what it is. I will happily not watch ads, which is ironic because I'm in the ad game, but at this point, I didn't get, that's my job. Yeah. I ain't got time for that at night. So,
well, and I'll even throw this out when we talk about streaming and Amazon and Disney and who the big players are. You're starting to see it right now. Amazon picked up Thursday Night Football, and that's going to be a big deal. And the NFL has announced officially, the commissioner, basically, Roger Goodell, said that the DirecTV dish package that a lot of people get to watch their favorite football team is moving off of DirecTV. That next season, it will be a streaming option. Well, Netflix, be a great person to buy, or buy a great company to buy it, but they probably don't have the money to compete with Disney and with Amazon. Yeah, and so that just lays the groundwork even for Microsoft to buy them, then make a play for the DirecTV football package, and now you've got a new company that is dominating.
Well, we'll see what happens with that. Speaking of domination, Adrian Sylvester.
Oh, yeah.
He got into a little tiff on Instagram, of all places. He started a war with his former producer on the movie Rocky. What's going on here?
This is one of my favorite stories. This is how you know the internet is over as we know it. Okay. So, 76-year-old Sylvester Stallone used Instagram to attack 91-year-old producer Irwin Winkler over the rights to Rocky. Remember, a movie that's almost 50 years old. And what he did is he put on Instagram this illustration of Irwin Winkler that had a knife coming out of his mouth. And he went into this rant in the comments about how Winkler's been controlling the rights to Rocky for all these years, and he wants his portion back before Winkler dies and gives the whole thing to his children, and leaving Stallone and his kids with nothing. And then Stallone got even dirtier. Stallone just he went below the belt, okay? He also went after Winkler's son, who is a grown man. Let's be honest. Winkler's 91, his son's probably like 70, and Stallone said that if anybody runs out of toilet paper, they should buy David Winkler's book
and use it for toilet paper.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. Things are getting
scorched earth.
Things are getting savage in Hollywood. It is what it is.
Yeah, man. Oh my God! You thought Drake and those guys were wild on the internet. Look out!
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the Kardashians ain't got nothing on Stallone.
This is the geriatric wars on Instagram. All right. Well, we got about 3.5-4 minutes here, so let's we'll skip over Harry Styles and talk about the two movies. One on Netflix, one at the theaters. My wife really wants to know about Nope, so we'll get to that one.
Okay.
But The Gray Man, Ryan Gosling. I've seen some reviews. I still don't really know what it's about. What's your thoughts?
Well, it's an interesting movie. It's kind of like, part Mission Impossible, part James Bond, part John Wick. It's Ryan Gosling as this CIA agent in this secret group, and he has come across very incriminating evidence against his CIA bosses, and now they want him dead. And he's going to travel the globe trying to avoid Chris Evans, the just crazy, flamboyant evil assassin that's leading all the other ones after Ryan Gosling, who's Mr. Calm, Mr. Understated, Mr. Blah.
Mr. Gray, the Gray Man.
Yeah.
Which is, okay, I mean, that's a phrase that means you're undercover and unnoticeable and you blend in, which I just think, I never think of blending in when I think of Ryan Gosling. He's way too good looking to just blend in.
I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah, what do you think here? Give me your scoop on it.
I'm going 2.5 waffles. I will say that it's best when you have Gosling and Evans kind of facing down and showing off, because Gosling is that low-key brooding guy. Evans is the big wild Bond villain, right? And he's having fun with it. And he brings a little something out of Gosling that isn't there for the rest of the movie. So I'll go 2.5 waffles.
So entertaining, but not necessarily Citizen Kane, right?
Yeah, and I don't think worth the $200 million that Netflix put into making this thing.
Dang.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, wow. How did they think they were going to get it back? Hey, maybe this is why they're having financial problems.
I don't know. A movie every week, and if it's 100 to 200 million a pop every week, start doing the math on that one, baby. That's some real money there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is the movie my wife has been wanting to see and talk about. Jordan Peele, who's really known for Key and Peele, right? The comedy.
Yeah.
He has done some just amazing movies that are scary. I mean, like, my wife says, you got to watch this. I'm like, it's Jordan Peele. She goes, no, sit down and watch this. And I watched it, and it was Them. And that movie was like, peeled your eyeballs back. That thing was amazing. And so now they've got the new one, which is called Nope. Give it to me.
Nope. And this is a brother and sister played by Keke Palmer and David Kaluuya out on this ranch, kind of in a rural part of California. Kind of close enough to LA to drive to LA in a couple of hours. And some strange storms have been breaking out, and the horses and the animals on the farm are acting kind of weird, and they think they see something in the clouds.
Okay.
What is it?
What is it?
What is it? And the reason it's called Nope is because they have a chance to nope out of there. And like every horror movie, they make their mistake of staying.
Right. The doorknob rattles and they look at it and say, should I get it? And you're like, nope, don't get it. No, then they go and open it. What do you think?
I think I thought it was going to be better. I'm not going to lie. I think it's a slow boil kind of movie. It grows and grows, and it kind of starts to get under your skin, and it starts to get creepy. I think the last act is obviously the best one, because now they're having a showdown with what it is up there in the clouds. I'm not going to give it away. And I think it needed that action maybe a little bit earlier, just to kind of keep the thrills keep the thrills higher when you're coming into this movie and you're all excited and you're all wondering what it's going to be. And there's this whole other side story about this tragedy that happened years ago with one of their neighbors, which I still haven't figured out how that fits into the movie. I'm giving it a reserved 2.5 waffles.
A reserved 2.5. So almost as much as the Gray Man, or as much as the Gray Man, but you have a reserve on this one.
Yeah, I want to like it more than maybe I do, and I'm trying to convince myself to like it. You know what I'm saying?
I said his other movie was Them, but it's called Us. Called Us, yes. Right?
Yeah, and also Get Out.
I say the one that really tweaked my melon was Get Out. That one was like that tweaked my brain. I was like, what? And it's just weird that Jordan Peele is this guy who you think is. Anyway, it's amazing stuff. So 2.5 and 2.5, Willie Waffle, wafflemovies.com. My friend, thank you for coming on board this week and sharing with us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, we'll be back next week, most likely.
Most likely, if the world doesn't end between now and then. All right, folks, coming up on Monday, it's Mayor Charlie Pierce and Scott Clayton, who's running for the Senate out in the Valley. We will see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. All right. I'm sorry. You were going to say something, and I rudely interrupted you because
no.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to make a stupid joke. As long as the monkeypox don't get me.
As long as the monkeypox, monkey shine. It's 12 monkeys all over again.
Oh yeah. Well, I just want you to know I did sign up for the New York State monkeypox alerts. So if the monkeypox gets close enough to me, I will get a text letting me know.
Okay, well, just keep that. Jeez. Something I said that we would try and get to here pretty quick, and I don't know if you've watched it yet, but it's the Michelle Yeoh movie, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Have you seen the
I have not had a chance yet. This is the little movie that could. Everybody I know who's seen it raves about it.
Yeah.
And says it's amazing. And said it's like the greatest take on a multiverse you can think of.
Yeah, no, I mean, it reminded me, it looked like a combination between The Matrix and Cloud Atlas, right? I mean, it was just kind of weird, but it looked so amazing. And it's got Short Round in it from Indiana Jones as a grown-ass adult. I mean, who could hate that? From the Goonies, I mean, it looks really wild, and so we got to get a take on that next week.
Yeah, and they're I think I read the other day they're bringing it back to theaters for another run with some additional footage and additional scenes and things like that.
All right, well you'll have to give us the report, my friend.
All right, I have an assignment now.
All right, well hopefully you do better than when I tell you about the TV shows. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, dude, I'm a movie critic. How well do you think I do at following the rules?
Really, exactly. All right, my friends. Well, we're out of here again. Scott Clayton on Monday from House or Senate District. It was D. Now it's N. My district, and then Mayor Charlie Pierce is running for governor. He's going to be on the program. So we got a full show on Monday. We will see you then. Have a great weekend, my friends. We'll see you on the other side.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.